Hello everybody. So with the release of Black Widow, we now have 24 Marvel movies, and you know I love the number 24, so today I'm going to rank all 24 MCU movies from the worst to the best. Let's go. So for this ranking, I'm just doing the movies, I'm not including the Disney Plus shows, but what I think I'm going to do is at the end of the year, I'm going to rank all MCU projects, the movies and the Disney Plus shows, everything from Iron Man to Spider-Man No Way Home, and I'll rank it all one big ranking. I think I'll also try to have done a MCU rewatch by then, so I'll have all new current thoughts on the movies in that video. This is what I kind of just view the movies as, just kind of how I view them, how I think about them. I haven't rewatched the entire MCU before doing this. This is just what my quick thoughts are, quick ranking is of them. It will probably change a lot from now to the end of the year when I do the big ranking. But for now, this is what I think the ranking is, and of course, the stuff in the middle, I think, can move around a lot. I think just because one thing's at 15 and another is at 14, they're pretty interchangeable, so this isn't like the definite concrete ranking, but it's more of like, in the sections of like 5 or 10, like these are the ones that are in that range of like 5, like this is what's in 11 through 15, but it's not necessarily like that's the order, that's a definite order, but it's just those are the ones that are there. It can move around a lot, but currently that's the order I view them in. And so also to keep this video from being 5 hours long, I limited the amount of stuff I'll say for the middle section, so I'm gonna, for the bottom 4, I'll go in depth saying why I think they're at the bottom, why I think they're the worst of the MCU movies. Then for the middle, I'll go kind of quick through my thoughts on them, and then for the top 5, I'll go, again, more in depth, explaining why they're the best of the Marvel movies. But first, we'll start out. Coming in at number 24 is The Incredible Hulk. Now, this movie is not bad by any means. It's for the same reason why I have Solo: A Star Wars Story at the bottom of my Star Wars ranking. It just doesn't fit with the rest. It's the easiest to skip on rewatch. It's not particularly, doesn't have particularly anything like special about it. It's just kind of something that's like, oh yeah, that's there, and I always have to remind myself, oh yeah, this is in the MCU, because a lot of the stuff that happens in it is completely forgotten. I mean, the actor who plays the Hulk is recast after this movie, and there's really no characters who continue after this. I mean, sure, we see Thunderbolt Ross in Civil War and Infinity War. He's a big part of the Sokovia Accords. And then, of course, I guess we're going to get Abomination and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. But besides that, there's really nothing that this movie does that is, that matters in the future, that is continued in the future. I mean, yeah, sure. Bruce Banner references this movie in Avengers when he says, oh, last time I was in New York, I kind of broke Harlem. But that's a very loose reference to this. It's just something that feels so far removed from the other Marvel movies, and it just, again, it's the easiest to skip on rewatch. It's still a good movie. Again, I enjoy it when I watch it. And there's some really cool stuff. I think, my favorite part is when he turns to the Hulk for the last time in the final battle, and he jumps onto the plane, and he's like, oh no, I'm not changing, but then he ends up changing when he falls, he falls through the ground and then comes up as the Hulk. That's my favorite moment from it, but besides that, there's not really anything here that's particularly memorable, and so, it's just, it's kind of by default at the bottom of the list. It's not great, it's not bad, but it's just it just doesn't fit with the rest of the MCU. So that's why it comes in at number 24 at the bottom of my ranking. Then at number 23, we have Captain Marvel. So really the big problem with this movie is that Captain Marvel isn't really likable. That's a big problem when your main character, when your title character isn't likable. And just I don't think Captain Marvel is that likable of a character. I think it's interesting they do the origin story in flashbacks. It's kind of a generic origin story, but I do appreciate that they they do it in flashbacks, that they have a different twist on it. It's, of course, cool to see de-aged Nick Fury, de-aged Samuel L. Jackson in this movie. It's cool to see Agent Coulson back, also de-aged, and it's cool to see, back to Nick Fury, how he lost his eye by getting it scratched out by a flurkin. Kind of anticlimactic, but it's cool to see how he lost his eye, I guess. I think the whole thing with the Skrulls being good, I don't think that works too well. Of course, I think Talos is great. I think, I think once he's introduced as a good guy, he really becomes really my favorite part of the movie for the rest of it. But besides Talos, this whole Skrulls thing wasn't that great. It kind of ruins the whole secret invasion plotline because, if the Skrulls are good, then you can't really do secret invasion unless they create a reason that the Skrulls turn bad or some of them turn bad. It just seems weird that they used this species of characters who are known from the comics, who are a big threat, that are, they can be create an interesting storyline where you don't really know who's a Skrull, who's not, the whole secret invasion thing. But they just make them, oh no, they're the victims of the situation, and it's like, okay, but are they going to be bad at some point? So, I'm not a big fan of the Skrulls turning out to be good guys. Again, Talos is great, but besides that, I'm not really the biggest fan of them being good. Also, it's not particularly that big of a reveal that, it's a reveal that the Skrulls are good guys, but it's not really a reveal that the Kree are bad guys, because, we've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, and the Kree are bad, Ronan is bad, so it's why did they pick Kree? I guess probably from the comics, you have to do Kree, but I don't know, I feel like you could have just did something different, to make it less obvious that the Kree were bad guys and the Skrulls were good guys. So that seemed weird. I don't think that whole reveal worked all that well. But one other good thing is we get to see the Tesseract again. Of course, it creates the question, how did it get from Howard Stark finding it at the end of the Captain America the First Avenger to it being in Mar-Vell's space station? I guess we'll have to find out how that connection at some point. But yeah, it was cool to see the Tesseract. And overall, this movie isn't bad. I enjoy it when I watch it. It just, compared to the rest of the movies on the list, is not that great. It's not the one that I enjoy. I don't enjoy it as much as the others. And again, Captain Marvel is not that likable of a main character. So that's why it comes in at number 23. Moving on to number 22, we have Iron Man 2. And so yeah, this movie is a real mess of a movie. It has too many plot lines. It's trying to be a sequel to Iron Man 2 while also trying to set up the Avengers. It kind of suffers from the same problem Batman vs. Superman does. Although Batman vs. Superman came out second, so technically that suffers from the same problem Iron Man 2 does. But really, there's just so much going on in this movie. You have Whiplash, who isn't that interesting of a villain. Justin Hammer isn't that interesting of a villain also. He's more interesting to watch, but it's just, he's not that interesting of a villain. It gets a bit convoluted when you have Tony's arc reactor killing him, and so he has to create a new element for information he got from his dead father, and it just, what is happening there? Like, I think that is just way too convoluted for this, and it's just, it doesn't work very well. But at least War Machine was introduced, so that's one good thing about this movie. Again, I enjoy this movie. When I watch it, I enjoy it. I think, you know, Robert Downey Jr. is great as Tony Stark, so it's always interesting to watch him do his thing. But if you just look at this movie, it's really just convoluted and too many plot lines. You throw Natasha Romanoff in there, like, it doesn't really make sense why she's there. She's just kind of there, and she's kind of, oh yeah, we have Black Widow here, just to have her be in here to, you know, not have her just be introduced in Avengers, and it's just like, yeah, but why? So, yeah, there's, again, too many plot lines here, gets a bit convoluted at times, so that's why it comes in at number 22. But at number 21 is Thor: The Dark World. Now, this movie is at the bottom of a lot of people's lists, and I see how you could look at this movie that way. It definitely isn't the best movie in the MCU, obviously because I have it at number 21, but I don't think it's bad by any means. I've always really enjoyed this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. Sure, Malekith is not a great villain at all. He's probably the worst villain of the MCU. There's no character development. He's just kind of evil for the sake of being evil. You're not even really sure what his overall plan is. He's just, I'm gonna take the ether, and that's it. But I think the set of good guy characters makes up for that. I think there's a lot of good interactions between Thor and Jane, and Thor and Loki, and you have Heimdall, and then, you know, there's stuff on Earth where there's Darcy and Eric, and it's just, I think that there's enough going on, enough interesting stuff with the good guy characters that it doesn't really matter that Malekith isn't developed at all. I think I'm able to just kind of look at him as just, he's a bad guy, he's the guy who has to be stopped. I don't really need him to have this amazing backstory of, like, oh, this is why he's evil, and this is his overall plan, it's, you know, it's really well constructed. I don't really need that from every villain. Sometimes it's good to just have the villain who's evil for the sake of being evil, and so I don't have as much of a problem with Malekith as some people do. It does some interesting stuff with the idea of the convergence of the 9 realms. It does a cool thing where it reverses the roles from the first Thor movie, whereas in the first Thor movie, Thor was the fish out of water on Earth. This time it's Jane as the fish out of water on Asgard. I mean, of course, they don't really explore that too much, but it's still cool to see, like, that switch. Like, first movie, Thor goes to Earth. Second movie, Jane goes to Asgard. So, I thought that was fine. I like their relationship. I think they did their relationship well in this movie. Of course, you have Frigga's death. I think that was very well done. You feel like the weight of it, and I think they did a really good job with Frigga's death. And of course, I think we have the best of Loki's fake-out deaths in this movie, where it's very deliberate fake-out death. So, yeah. I think this movie is great. I think it gets way too much hate than it deserves, and that's why it comes in at number 21. So now I'm going to start speeding things up and just start giving my quick thoughts on the movies for the next few. And so at number 20, we have Ant-Man and the Wasp. So this movie, it's a really fun movie. It's definitely not as good as the original, as the first Ant-Man, but it's still very fun. Sure, Ghost may not be that great of a villain, but it does some cool stuff exploring the quantum realm and kind of setting that up for what happens in Avengers Endgame. And so, I enjoy this film a lot. It's not the best, it's not as good as Ant-Man, but it's a great movie nonetheless, and I thoroughly enjoy it when I watch it. Then, at number 19, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Once again, this movie is not as good as the first one. I like the idea of having, having Peter Quill meet his father, but I don't think it was done as well as it could have. But still, this has some funny moments. It continues the lightheartedness of the first one, the humor of the first one. It does a good job. I think there's a lot of the jokes throughout it that work very well, but I just think it's just not as good as the first one. I want it to be higher on the list, but I just have to put it this low. And when I just look at it compared to the rest of the movies on the list, I think it has to come in at number 19, even though I feel like it should be higher. Then at number 18, we have Thor. So this is a very bland movie. I enjoy it. I think there's some good elements to it. It definitely does what it's trying to do with this whole Shakespearean story kind of thing. There's some funny fish out of water stuff with Thor on Earth, and it's a good redemption story for Thor, but overall, it's just kind of a bland movie. There's nothing that really pops about it, so that's why it has to come in at number 18. Then at number 17, we have Iron Man 3. This is another movie that I think gets way too much hate. I think it's a good follow-up to Avengers, exploring Tony's PTSD. Of course, I think they could have done the Mandarin a little bit better. I don't personally have as much of a problem with it as a lot of people do. I think it works fine, but I still think it was a bit weird the way they handled it, so I think that, that could have been handled a little bit better. I like the new suit he has in this movie, the one that comes to him. I think that's a really cool concept. I like the interactions between Tony and Harley, but because a lot of the events of this movie kind of get forgotten in future movies, and also they handle the Mandarin very weirdly, I have to put it at number 17. At number 16, we have Captain America, The First Avenger. So I think this is a good movie. I think it's a good origin story for Captain America. I certainly thoroughly enjoy it every time I watch it, but it's not as complex as some of the future Captain America movies. It has the same heart as it, but it's very simple, just kind of Captain America fighting Nazis in World War II. It's a great movie. I enjoy it, but it's much simpler than the Captain America movies that come after it, so that's why I have to put it at number 16. At number 15, we have AntMan, a heist movie in the MCU starring Paul Rudd. It's much more lighthearted than other MCU movies. It has good comedy. It's much more smaller scale. Get it? And yeah, it's a fun movie. I enjoy it, but it still just comes in at 15th place. Then, at number 14, we have Doctor Strange. So, this is just a pretty generic origin story for Doctor Strange. There's nothing really too special about the origin story getting him to become Doctor Strange, but once you get into the third act and you start exploring some of like the cool stuff of this world, when you have like the city going inside of itself, like the Inception kind of thing, and then you have Doctor Strange putting Dormammu in the time loop. There's just some interesting stuff that they explore towards the end, but I think the beginning of it is really just a generic origin story, and it does good world building, but it's a generic origin story, so I think that it's good setup for what they can do in the future. It gets me very, very excited for Multiverse of Madness, but for this, again, it's just a generic origin story, so that's why it comes in at number 14. Then, at number 13, we have Avengers Age of Ultron. This is definitely the worst of the Avengers movies, but it's still good. It introduces us to Wanda and Pietro, and even though at the time Pietro's death at the end wasn't, just kind of felt like a throwaway thing, just kind of, there wasn't as much emotional weight at the time, I think they've done a good job at developing Wanda's character moving forward enough to really get you to care a lot about it on rewatch. It kind of gives you a new perspective on it when you rewatch it. Now, of course, James Spader is great as the voice of Ultron. It's fun seeing Robert California be a villain in the MCU. And you also get a great scene where all the Avengers try to lift Thor's hammer. and it teases Captain America being worthy in Avengers Endgame. But now, at number 12, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. I go back and forth as to which Spider-Man movie in the MCU I like better. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's Homecoming. At the moment, it's Homecoming. That's why it's higher on the list. But I still enjoy this movie. I think Mysterio is a great villain. A lot of people have problems with Spider-Man not being in New York. They don't really like him, going all around the world, being Spider-Man. They wanted to see him in New York. I personally don't have a problem with that. And the only reason this is low on the list is I think I'm kind of burnt out on it. I've watched it so many times. I'm just kind of burnt out on it. So that's why it's lower on the list than I would usually put it. So that's why it comes in at number 12. And at number 11, we have Thor Ragnarok. This is definitely the best of the Thor movies. It's hilarious. They really lean into Chris Hemsworth's ability to be funny, his comedic abilities. I think Jeff Goldblum is hilarious as the Grand Master. We obviously got a Hulk in here, and we got a Doctor Strange cameo. Matt Damon is in it for some reason, playing Loki in the play. Hela isn't a great villain, but she's good enough as Thor and Loki's sister that they never knew about. And yeah, this movie is just a very hilarious movie in the MCU that I can rewatch so many times over and over again, and it still is just as hilarious as the first time. Kicking off the top 10, we have Guardians of the Galaxy. This is another hilarious movie inside the MCU. There's a lot of jokes in here. I mean, come on. There's a talking raccoon and a walking tree who are integral parts of the team, and it works. That is amazing, and it's hilarious, and it's great. It somehow took these really obscure characters from the comics and made them household names. It's a movie that nobody thought would work, nobody thought was going to be good, and it ended up being one of the best and most hilarious movies inside the MCU. So that's why it has to come in at number 10. At number 9, we have SpiderMan Homecoming. As I said, when I was talking about Far From Home, I go back and forth whether I like this one better or Far From Home better. Currently, I like this one better. I just like seeing Spider-Man in high school, just kind of doing the whole high school thing. It's cool seeing Spider-Man finally in the MCU, finally getting his own movie inside of the MCU. I mean, Spider-Man's my favorite character, so if you mix Spider-Man with MCU, of course I'm going to enjoy it. It's a fun high school coming-of-age movie, but with Spider-Man, which I think they did a good job at kind of portraying that, making it really a high school coming-of-age movie first, and then kind of just adding in Spider-Man to it. I think that worked very well. And of course, Vulture, a great villain with a really great reveal of his true identity at the end.
He must be Peter.
Yeah.
I'm Liz's dad.
Then, at number 8, we have our newest MCU movie, Black Widow. So, this is a movie I want to put higher, but no, it should be lower. I think there's a bit of a recency bias with this. I think since it's the newest MCU movie, it's the one that I kind of think of the most. It's definitely a movie that I think is going to get lower and lower on the list as time goes on, as I realize that Taskmaster wasn't that great of a villain, wasn't used as great as he or she could have, but it's still a good movie. It gives some much needed backstory to Natasha Romanoff. The first half of it really just feels like a Jason Bourne movie inside of the MCU. It gets a bit too crazy in the last half of it when you're having Black Widow falling through the sky, fighting Taskmaster, falling onto various pieces of debris, and somehow not dying when she hits the ground. Definitely the two big standouts of the movie are Yelena and Alexei. They're both hilarious. They're both great. I think, they're the really big standouts of it. They do kind of pull the spotlight away from Scarlett Johansson at times, but they're still great, and I can't wait to see them in future MCU projects. But, once again, this movie was something that should have been great, could have been great, but just did not meet the expectations. It made a few too many mistakes, and it really is something that I see going lower and lower on the list as time goes on. But if you want to hear my full review of Black Widow, you can click the card up there. But moving on to number 7, we have Black Panther. This is probably objectively the best movie inside of the MCU. I think if you look at it in terms of the story and the characters and the visuals and the cinematography and all of the technical elements of filmmaking, it's probably the best out of all the MCU movies. And the only reason it's so low at 7th place is just because I enjoy the top 6 much better. Not that I don't enjoy this movie, I enjoy it a lot. I think, again, it is a great movie, but the top 6, they all hold a special place in my heart. I really just enjoy all of them a lot more than this one. Not a lot more, but you know, there's a certain special thing about each of them that this one doesn't have. And so, again, while this is objectively the best, in my subjective opinion, it is not the best in terms of my overall enjoyment. But, again, it's a great movie that really, a lot of the reason why this movie is so great is because of its villain Killmonger, who's really right about Wakanda, that they shouldn't be turning their back on the rest of the world. They should be helping them. They should be using their resources to help the world instead of hiding from them. Just the way Killmonger's going about doing that is wrong, and through what Killmonger does, he ends up changing T'Challa's views and gets him to decide to, to open up Wakanda, to lend a hand to the rest of the world, give them their resources, help the world, instead of, again, hiding from it. So, but do it the right way, rather than Killmonger's plan, which is to, take over the world. T'Challa's plan is, no, tell everybody the truth about Wakanda and help the world with their resources. Also, the visuals in this movie are great. Again, like I said, objectively, the movie is amazing. It just, the cinematography, the CGI, just the visual effects are great. It looks amazing. Of course, everybody's pointed this out. The CGI in the final battle between T'Challa and Killmonger isn't the greatest, but I've never had the biggest problem with it. There's been times when I've watched it and I haven't really noticed the CGI being weird, so yeah, I don't have much of a problem with it. I think that mostly the visuals in this movie look amazing, and the only reason that it's so low at 7th place is just because I enjoy the top 6 way more. But with that said, in 6th place, we have Iron Man. The movie that started this entire franchise, and we all know it's great. Of course, I'm not gonna lie, I think some of its greatness definitely comes from nostalgia, but I think it's still a great movie. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark is amazing. You just love seeing him anytime he's on screen. You're just intrigued by his narcissism. Really, you just enjoy watching him so much. From the moment you see him, you're intrigued, is the best word you can use. You're intrigued by him, and you're immediately like, I can't wait to see this guy's journey to redemption, realizing that his weapons have fallen into the wrong hands, and deciding to shut down his whole company, and becoming a superhero, and just starting him on this journey to sacrificing himself in Avengers Endgame. And it all starts here. Obadiah Stane, he may not be the best Marvel villain, but I think he's a pretty good one, better than most, and I think he is a pretty good villain as this, mentor for Tony Stark that ends up being evil. And yeah, overall, this movie, it really just has a special place in my heart. Of course, a lot of it just comes from nostalgia, but that doesn't matter. This movie is great. You love watching Tony Stark doing his thing, and this is definitely the best of the Iron Man movies, and it's just a really great MCU movie in general. But kicking off the top 5, we have Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Now, this is a lot of people's favorite MCU movie. It's at the top of their list, and yeah, I enjoy it too. That's why it's in the top 5, and I think it really does a good job at exploring the corruption of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it being infiltrated by Hydra, and having Steve and Natasha going on the run, not being sure who to trust. Then you also have the element of it where Bucky's alive. That there's that whole reveal. There's that whole tension in that final battle when Steve is fighting Bucky, and you could really feel that Steve does not want to be fighting Bucky, and you're seeing he's trying his best not to, but also to, successfully take down S.H.I.E.L.D. And he's like, there's so much emotion in that, and so I think they did a really good job with that. Of course, we also, we get Sam is introduced in this movie as Falcon. So yeah, this movie is great. I really thoroughly enjoy it, and for now, it comes in at number 5. At number 4, I have Captain America: Civil War. A lot of people would put Winter Soldier above this, but for me, I enjoy this better. Yeah, I know a lot of people call it Avengers 2.5. It's not a Captain America movie, really. It's basically just Avengers 2.5. I don't care. It's still good. I think that this movie does a really good job at having events happen that have consequences for the rest of the MCU. Like, basically, this movie is what causes Thanos to win in Infinity War. Because the Avengers break up here, they're not united to fight Thanos, Thanos wins. And so, I think that's really cool that this movie has those consequences, and you really see why both Steve and Tony are doing what they're doing. And it all culminates in that final battle when Tony finds out that Bucky killed his parents, and Steve is having to protect Bucky from Iron Man, and you have Steve versus Tony, and that really, it just has so much emotion to that. I think in some ways it has more emotion than Steve versus Bucky and the Winter Soldier. You just seeing this friendship break, this team break in that moment, and I think they did a really good job with that. Zemo, he's the mastermind of it all, and I think he was underused here, but I think he's still a really great villain. Of course, they use him more in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, he's a great villain. He's a bit underused here, but I think he's a really great character to explore. I hope they use him in the future. And also, of course, this movie introduces Spider-Man to the MCU, so I think that right there puts it higher than Winter Soldier. You have Spider-Man in it. I love Spider-Man, so overall, I think this movie did a really good job at really showing this break in the Avengers and having that have major consequences later on in the MCU. But kicking off the top 3 is Avengers. The first time the Avengers team up, a movie that so many people thought would never work. How could you have so many characters in one movie and give them all the amount of time they deserve? It's impossible, and all those people were proven wrong because this movie is great. They did a really good job at balancing all the different characters, giving everybody time to shine, and culminating in the final Battle of New York. That's really great. Loki, he's a great villain in this movie, and again, it's just so cool to see all of these heroes together fighting a common enemy. It is amazing. It is crazy. It's something that, at the time, had never been done before. Everybody said it would never work, and it works so well. It is amazing. It is great. I love it. That's why it comes in at number 3. But our runner-up is Avengers Infinity War. Avengers 1 walked, so Avengers Infinity War could sprint. This is a movie that a lot of people have at number 1, and the only thing that holds me back from that is that there's just so much going on. It's so fast-paced. There's really no downtime. It just kind of, from start to finish, like I just said, sprints. I think because there's so much going on, it takes a while to get back to some things, like the whole plot line with Tony, Doctor Strange, and Spider-Man. They're there at the beginning, and then like 45 minutes go by before you go back to that, and by then you've totally forgotten that even happened in the same movie, and you're like, oh, right, that they got captured by him. Okay, yeah, alright, now I remember that. So I just think that stuff like that just shows that there's way too much going on. So that's what holds me back from putting it at first place. Of course, I still thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think part of the reason why this movie is great is because of its villain, Thanos. Like, he goes from just kind of being this big villain in the background who you're not really sure what his whole deal is. He's working towards something, but you're not really sure what it is exactly, to completely understanding why he's doing what he's doing, and you're just like, okay, I get it. I get exactly what he's doing, why he's doing it. He has to be stopped, obviously, but he's a villain that you can see his perspective. He's not doing all of this for control. He doesn't want power. He doesn't want to rule the universe. He really wants to save the universe, and he thinks by killing half the universe, he's saving it, because he saw what happened on his planet, and so he doesn't want that to happen to the universe. So his plan is he's gonna kill half of the universe so that half the universe can survive. And that is so interesting. That's I think they did a good job at getting you to see his point of view. And also, he wins at the end. Like, he wins. He snaps and kills half the universe. And that's how the movie ends. He won. Which is completely crazy. Like, you see it and you're like, wait, did Thanos just won? What? This movie is great. I think it does a really good job at making a villain that you understand. I think it balances all the characters fairly well, but again, there's too much going on, so that's why it comes just shy of first place. And so, in first place, we have Avengers Endgame. So, where Infinity War had too many characters, too much going on, it just kind of sprinted from start to finish. There's really no downtime. It's half an hour longer. It has half as many characters, and therefore can slow things down more. Can have slow moments where you can explore the state of the world 5 years after half the universe died. Then you get to the time heist, and you could have slow moments there where you can have Tony talk to his father, and Thor talk to his mother, and you have Natasha sacrifice herself for the Soul Stone, and then Thanos figures out what they're doing. And it all culminates in the final battle when Captain America catches Mjolnir, and then you have the whole portal scenes where everybody dead comes through the portals, and there's the entire MCU going up against Thanos' army, and you have every single callback you can imagine throughout it, and it's fan service at its best. It's fan service, and it's great. You have Iron Man take the stones from Thanos and snap, destroying all of Thanos' whole army while dying in the process, and his final words are, "I am Iron Man." A callback to the end of the first Iron Man movie, the movie that started it all, where it ends with him saying, "I am Iron Man," And that's the last thing he says here. It's great. You have the funeral, and Harley from Iron Man 3 is there, and then Captain America goes back to return the stones to their proper timelines, then decides to stay and live out his life with Peggy. Then he gives Sam the shield so he can become the next Captain America and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it's just this great movie that finishes off the Infinity Saga, that finishes off 10 years worth of storytelling. It does such a good job at paying off every single thing that it needed to, tying up all the loose ends while also setting up stuff for the future, for Phase 4 and Phase 5 and Phase 6 and the future, the next 10 years of the MCU. And so I think this is the best movie inside the MCU, but kind of ironically, it gets all of its greatness from everything before it. Because really, the MCU is this really special thing that they've been able to tell this big story for 10 years, and I'm very excited to see where it goes in the future. But anyway, that is my ranking of all 24 MCU movies. Please comment below your ranking, and remember to give this video a like, subscribing to the channel, and maybe check out some of my other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.